I'm Ron Dearman, and my position in the museum is to be a host, to show the people around and answer questions whenever I can, as soon as I can.
I spent 10 years in the Royal Air Force as first working on aeroplanes, fabric covered and dinghies, packing parachutes, safety equipment, and I've done that for 2 years, and then I went overseas to Suez and was posted there for 2.5 years.
The Supermarine Spitfire was designed by a man called R.J. Mitchell.
In 1913 they used to have a competition, what they called the Schneider Trophy, and this developed into 1931 when they had just more or less the Spitfire on floats, and a man named Mitchell designed it, invented the Spitfire, and he died in 1937 before he could see his plane come into operation. But before this, he thought that when he saw the plane on the floats, if I could design this plane without floats, wonder what it would be like. And he'd done that, just that, and this is what he found out, and this is what the Spitfire looked like on floats. And this was the original, started off as the Supermarine Vickers Spitfire, or the Vickers Supermarine Spitfire.
An Australian by the name of Hawker came over and opened up a factory over here in this country, and from there he produced it, and it was ready for 1936. It was produced in 1936 and it was ready for wartime then. It was designed as a fighting aircraft.
What engine type was used in the Spitfire?
The Rolls-Royce Merlin engine was produced, but in later years they used a Griffin engine.
This was a Rolls-Royce Merlin engine as well. This 1,950 horsepower against the Spitfire of its day, 1,1200. So this was a more powerful aircraft.
The Hurricane was designed more in mind to be a fighting aircraft than the Spitfire was, yes.
Of course, they brought into service in 1938 because there was an inkling of war. They used to do a few photographic shots over Germany and all the rest of it while it was still peace, and then when war came down us in 39 September, they were ready to fight.
Franco-British cooperation grows closer, and somewhere in France, 2 air squadrons, 1 British, 1 French, carry out joint photographic operations. British pilots fly in battle bombers to perform their part of the duty. The French airmen use twin-engine machines. You've already seen many of the brilliant results of these photographic flights, which continue to keep a close watch on the Nazis. Hurricanes accompany the bombers by way of escort. When the flights return unscathed, they have more enemy secrets for the Allied staff to study.
What was the primary function of the Spitfire that we are familiar with?
Well, the primary function was to be a fighting aircraft. One man in the aircraft to go and fight other aircraft, enemy aircraft, at any theatre of war.
Apart from the dogfighting, what other roles did the Spitfire play?
They had different models of Spitfires, different marks of Spitfires. There was 21 different marks of Spitfires, and some were used for reconnoitring, some were used for photography, and others were used for low-level flying, and for any theatre of war you went to, they were using the same purposes.
Fighters of the Royal Air Force go racing into action.
What was the primary primary function of the Hurricane that we are familiar with?
The primary function was to be used as a fighting aircraft to attack enemy aircraft that came over here. Purely and simple, a fighting aircraft.
Apart from the dogfighting, what other roles did the Hurricane play?
Much the same as the Spitfire. They'd done photography, reconnoitring, low-level flying.
Tank busting, marshalling yards, flying over to France, turning back and coming back again, and he had plenty of armament and it done a lot of damage. As I say, it done more damage than the Spitfire.
The turnaround time of the Hurricane was just a little bit less than the Spitfire, which is about 4 minutes for the ammo, and then again for the fueling it took the full time, so it went down to about 12 minutes turnaround time on the Hurricane. Turnarounds with the Spitfire was about 14-15 minutes. As for rearming, the rearmament took about 5-10 minutes, but the refueling took most of the time. So it was a 15-minute turnaround. Most Spitfires carried 2 cannons and 8 machine guns. The cannons had 120 rounds and the machine guns had 350 rounds. I think that the Spitfire was just a little bit faster than the Hurricane, and the Spitfire had a better turning area than the Hurricane.
The Spitfire could turn quicker, it was faster in battle, and it could, well, it was smaller, that's why it could do the turn. It carried more armament than the Hurricane, but the advantage was one was small and one was big. Nobody mentions the Spitfire without they don't the Hurricane, you know. The glory seems to be put onto the Spitfire, but of course the Hurricane done more damage and shot down more aeroplanes. But hardly anybody ever talks about it.
In a special message of congratulation to the Fighter Command, Mr. Churchill says the results they have obtained give us just confidence in the approaching struggle. These are some of the pilots, Canadians, who are daily hurling Spitfire, Hurricane or Defiant into the masses of knots continue to be sent against us. Hitler hopes to gain the mastery of the air, but so long as the British Empire breeds men like these, it is Britain who will gain and hold the mastery. The Fighter Command has already performed wonders, and at every alarm it gains fresh glory.
The Spitfire has always, in my opinion, been a prima donna, took all the glory. But then again, the Hurricane is the man who shot all the bombers down. They were a good attacking aircraft for bombers. The Spitfire protected the Hurricanes from the fighter escort that the Germans sent over. The Hurricane looks a lot bigger plane than the Spitfire. Looking at the Spitfire, it always looks flat on the top. But when you look at the Hurricane, it's got a definite bulge where the pilot is out there. And also in the air you can see the difference when they're flying by the air intakes underneath. But to most people they both look the same aircraft.
Once you've done anything during the war, it was luck. Everything was luck. If you didn't get killed, if you come home from work, you were lucky.
If it wasn't for the Spitfire in the Battle of Britain, and the Hurricane, if I might say so, if it was for those 2 aircraft, the war wouldn't have been won. The Germans would have overtaken us quite easily with the power that they had.
The answer to that, without the Air Force, we'd have had it.